what you're about to hear today. The first piece is by Leonard Bernstein. Now, it's called For Susanna Kyle. It's from a set of 5 pieces for piano called Anniversaries, and they were all dedicated to musician friends that he knew. Now, if Bernstein was still alive, on Friday he would have been 105 years old. So it is a fitting tribute to one of the great musicians ever. The second piece for the prelude is called At Peace with Myself by Rick Graham. As you will hear, it is very reflective and very, how can I put it, atmospheric in its presentation. So there we are, a little bit about the music. And now this is Leonard Bernstein's For Susanna Kyle.
Good morning. My name is Jane Castleman. I'm a member of the Sunday Service Committee, and I'll also be your service associate today. Loretta Downs and Lorna Dean will be presenting this morning, and here are our opening words. They're by Marilyn Falkowski. We welcome you. We know you come here for different reasons, to find community, to seek your spiritual and personal truths, to question, to nurture your heart and soul, to be nurtured, to comfort, to find comfort, and perhaps to find the answers to some of your bigger questions. We welcome you. We know you come from different places, different religions, different beliefs, and different backgrounds. We hope you will find comfort, connection, challenge, and love here. We hope you will find ways to provide outreach for others in our fellowship and in our world community. And so I just want to welcome you live from Fellowship Hall. It's our LCUUF Sunday service. As you know, our announcements were on a slideshow before the service, and were also sent out with a weekly newsletter on Friday. If you're new and would like to receive that newsletter and other emails, please talk to a member of the welcome team or write to us at info@lakechapala.org. And now a special welcome to our visitors. If you are visiting with us for the first time or have returned or reconnected with us, after a long absence, we invite you to say your name and tell us where you're from. And if you're on Zoom, use the Zoom raise hand feature, and we'll ask you to unmute. So if you're in the room now, just raise your hand. There we go. Here we go. It appears to be on.
Good morning. I'm thrilled to find this place of community, and my name is Claudia Essenberg, and I just moved here from North Dallas a week and a half ago. I live and bought a house in San Antonio, so I walked here. It was wonderful.
Okay. Now let's switch to those on Zoom. Is there anyone new with us on Zoom?
I don't see anyone today.
Thank you. And just a brief note, we offer a wide variety of services on various topics presented by our members, outside guests, as well as, of course, our minister, Reverend Matt Alspaugh. We hope that you will return to sample this variety of thought and belief. So now let's light our chalice. And our chalice lighting words today are by Katie Sivani Gelfand. We light our chalice as a symbol of gratitude as we celebrate the abundance of our lives together. In this sanctuary, we harvest bushels of strength for one another and offer our crop with the hands of compassion and generosity. In the authentic and gentle manner of our connections, we cultivate a simple sweetness to brighten our spirits. May we be grateful for the ways we nourish and uplift each other, for it is the sharing of this hallowed time together that sustains us. Now let us light our chalice with these words that we sing together.
Rekindle this night in celebration for the life that we share.
Each moment is a miracle encompassing everything, the joy and the sorrow, failure and success, disappointment and happiness, the celebration and grief. This is the time in our service where we can briefly share our joys, our sorrows, and our milestones. We'll start with the folks in the room to give those on Zoom a chance to type joys and sorrows into the chat to be read aloud by the Zoom host. First, let us recall the joys. Whatever you may be celebrating, whatever evokes a feeling of joy or peace for yourself or others, are there any joys that people here in the room would like to share?
Hi, I'm Liz Angland. When I got up this morning around 4 a.m., I looked out and my $4,000 electric tricycle was missing. And it really turned me into a spin. It was hard to get back to sleep. But I went out later and the neighbor came out. Oh, and my electric bike was there. And the neighbor came out and said, well, I noticed that you didn't lock it up, so I brought it in my house to keep it safe. And he's Mexican.
Well, a lot of you know that I work with Mama Cleo's Boys Home, and we raised a lot of money with the concert, but I'm so happy to be a part of this community because they post on Facebook what they need. In this case, it was school supplies. They had such an outpouring of school supplies. They have enough to take them almost through the whole year. So, notebooks and backpacks and pens, oh my, all of that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Phyllis, and I am very happy to be here today. I lit a flame the other day, and I put some a vegetarian hamburger in a pot, and the whole thing just blew up on me. And I took that flaming pot and threw it in the sink with water running on it. I couldn't think straight, but I just know I've never seen such flames in my entire life. It was huge, and it was amazing that I didn't catch fire. So I was just thankful to be alive, and I am today. I'm very thankful to be alive.
Are there any joys to be shared on Zoom? Oh, sorry.
I am really joyful that I woke up this morning and I got to share what I know with all of you. Very exciting. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Loretta. Okay, now we're ready for Zoom. Oops, no, you're not. One more.
Sorry. I have a joy, but a little kernel of sorrow in the middle, because I have been in such a wretched mood lately, and I've been mean to people. And I look back and I go, oh, how could you do this? So yesterday, I went to a class that was going to improve me, and nobody was there. So it was at the Legion. So I sat down and had a taco, and the woman sitting across from me was the embodiment of serenity. And we just talked peacefully for about an hour, and it all went away. And so I'm so happy to be amongst such caring people.
Okay, now Zoom.
Now from Christine, my son and daughter-in-law and her mother are visiting in the wake of my husband's death. My son and daughter-in-law have invited me to live with them when I can walk and travel again. 2 more surgeries to go, and I will. And that's it.
Thank you. Now let us voice our sorrows. Whatever you or the world may be holding that is in need of our healing and caring thoughts. Are there any sorrows that people here in the room would like to share?
My name is Lynn, and most of you all know that I was an American Field Service exchange student when I was 17 in Uruguay. And I stayed with a family that had 4 children, 2 that were about my age, and a boy 10 and a little girl 4. And Luis, the boy, moved to Mexico City about 20 years ago and has been living there in the capital. And he became an Uber driver, and Monday he disappeared. His phone is turned off, his car's missing, he's missing, and he was driving at night. He was an Uber driver at night, although we had talked to him, my sister and I, trying to convince him it would be so much better during the day. So anyhow, if you guys would just keep him in your thoughts. Thanks. Oh, sorry.
I brought up my niece Lisa a few times for prayer and thoughts with cancer, and she's just gone into hospice care. Don't know how much time she has left. She's a mother of 49 with 3 grown children and grandchildren. It's pretty sad for our family, so appreciate your kind thoughts and prayers.
Hi, I don't know how this works. I sent this message in, but I don't know if it will be read since I'm here. I'm very sad to say a fabulous woman, Bridget Andrews, who's been in AHEEC for almost 20 years, a fabulous woman, suddenly died last Tuesday. A very dear friend of mine, very organized. She had all her papers in order. She would be fine this morning at this talk. And she would laugh and say, I have it all covered, now do as I wish. The good news, there's a joy in it. Her son was able to fly from LA to be with her for the last 4 or 5 hours of her life. She knew what was going on. She gave us instructions, and she was at peace. But God, I'm going to miss her. I can't imagine my life here without it.
Thanks. I'm Devora. Please light a candle in memory of my husband, Bob Kelly. I'm struggling this week for some reason. This is the 18th month anniversary of his death, and it's hitting me really hard. I've been in touch with my kids, and I've been crying a lot, but I am very thankful that I have this community to hold me up and support me, whether I'm up or down. So candle of sorrow, but tinged with joy.
Are there any sorrows to be shared on Zoom?
Yes, from Ellen McFarland. Please light a candle of concern for a family friend who's in the hospital with respiratory failure. And that's it for Zoom.
Thank you. And this candle from our care team represents the joys and sorrows we hold in the silent sanctuary of our hearts. We light this candle for all those unspoken sorrows and joys. Let us share a moment of silence to hold in our hearts both the sorrows and the joys that have been shared this morning. We give to remind ourselves how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we're part of something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and sacred space. We give with a faith that together we have enough. While you're considering your gifts to the fellowship, remember that each month LCUUF donates 5,000 pesos or more to an organization in our lakeside community. For the month of August, we've been supporting Tepewa Centro Comunitario. The Tepewa neighborhood is situated on the hillside above downtown Chapala in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the state of Jalisco. Their vision is to help a village to help itself, to create a place for the poor of the village where they can go for food, counseling, guidance, and help of any kind. So instructions for payments to the fellowship are on a slide during the announcements before the service every week. And for the people here in the room, we'll pass this basket. If you're new here today, you're struggling to hold things together, just let the basket pass you by. Your presence is more than enough for us. If you're not attending the fellowship in person, please donate to share the basket when you pay your pledge, either separately or indicate what part of your donation is for Share the Basket. And please note, if you, this is new, if you have an invoice or receipt that needs to be reimbursed, please make sure your name, amount, and what the money was spent on is included, and then put it in an envelope as the basket comes around, and our treasurer will make sure your payment will be made the following week. The offering for now has been given and gratefully received. The topics of our services are sometimes suggested by a holiday, a date, or the season, by an event or a social issue that affects our fellowship and community, a concern for the world as a whole, or our growth as individuals. Our presenters today will bring together two ideas. In part one, Loretta Downs will talk to us about the why of expressing our values fully through our actions and relationships, which enriches us deeply and also leaves behind a legacy that will change the future of the world after us. And in part two, because next month, September, the cost of creating a will in Mexico will be discounted, Lorna will present a brief slideshow to walk us through the how of leaving a legacy by sharing tangible assets First, let me tell you about Loretta. She's passionate about improving the end-of-life experience. Her knowledge focused through more than 35 years of being a companion to AIDS and hospice patients, friends, family, nursing home, death doula clients. She's published many articles and books. She's been quoted endlessly, interviewed for videos, radio shows, and podcasts, and she's spoken to us several times before. So thank you, Loretta, for being with us today.
Thank you, Jane, and thanks for this invitation to live my mission, which is to create opportunities to talk about dying and death in positive terms. If you hadn't realized, we're all going to do it. So we might as well make friends with death. In 1985, my first friend died of AIDS, and my exploration of death and dying began. Since then, I've watched thousands of people living the end of their lives, and I've witnessed both very hard and very gentle exits. One of the lessons that I learned from these teachers is that planning ahead while you're able makes a huge difference in how your life ends. It makes a difference in the quality of your death and the memory that you leave behind. We're all the Olympians of aging. We're still here and upright. Yeah, all of us have lost people we love. One sadness today was a 49-year-old who's now in hospice care. Death doesn't come to just the old. So we really are lucky. We're the lucky ones. And we're still here and living a dream in Mexico, but we're also closer to the end of our lives than we've ever been. One of my 78-year-old friends recently told me he's been to 6 funerals this year. And he said, all my pallbearers are dead. I told him to make younger friends. Even after 10 years of being with dying and being president of the Chicago End-of-Life Care Coalition, working with hospices all over Chicago, I didn't fully understand why planning ahead was so important until the Thanksgiving after my mother died. I was 57, single, and without children. 12 of my closest family members were gathered at the table, from my 22-year-old godson on his way to Iraq with the Marines the next week, to my 92-year-old aunt, who was the last of my mother's 5 surviving siblings, who was almost all there. As I listened to Grace, it was, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I realized at that moment that one of us at the table will be the first to die, and one will be the last. Thankfully, my godson returned from Iraq, but my aunt did die 2 years later. At that moment, I also realized that I could be either first or last. And I began to have a panic attack. I was like, oh my, what am I going to? And then they started passing the food, and I decided to return to the present moment, and I filled my plate twice. Maybe I went back for even thirds. But even here, one of us will be the first and one will be the last. And each position takes a different bit of preparation. The next time you're with one or more of the people you love, allow yourself a moment for the awareness that one of you will be first and one will be last. I guarantee you it will transform your relationships. It's very difficult to be angry with somebody you know doesn't have a lot of time with you. Just a moment of awareness. Let it build into you. Driving home that day, I thought, if I'm in a car accident and died suddenly, my sister would be in charge of everything, and she had no idea where my documents were, what my account numbers were, what my passwords were, and how I wanted my life to end. That, I need to take care of that business. So I set Valentine's Day as a deadline, pun intended, and I completed my advance directives. When I did, I called her up and said, Dolores, would you be my power of attorney for healthcare? And she said, Loretta, you're my baby sister. I don't want you to ever die. And I said, then you can't be that person, because under certain conditions, I would not want to be kept alive. So she wasn't number one on my power of attorney for healthcare, but she was number 3. And we had many conversations about what I wanted, what my values and beliefs were for the quality of my death. I put my July birthday as a deadline for completing my will. And before I did, I got a call from my financial manager asking to verify the beneficiary on my IRA. I said, it's my estate. And he said, no, you can't have an estate as a beneficiary. You have to name a person. Not remembering what I'd done 5 years earlier, I said, well, who's that? It was the man I'd lived with at the time and left 4 years later. He and his new wife would have had a vacation house on me. So I said, fax me that form. You know, I can promise you a whole new level of peace of mind by considering the value of your death and the effects it will have on the people who love you and the people who will need to care for you. You know, the people of Bhutan believe that if you contemplate death 5 times a day, would you give me my phone? 5 times a day, you'll be happy. And Bhutan is always at the top of the list of happiest countries in the world on the annual listing. It's also a poor country like Mexico. There is an app based on that philosophy. It's called We Croak. And for only 99 cents, it will send you a message 5 times a day. It says, remember, you will die. Open here for a quote. And the quote I got this morning is, life is too short to be lived badly. Devorah got a different one. She's also got the app. It said, if you're dead, you're dead. You know, this is just making friends with death. It's just like making friends with people. We need to meet her a lot. We need to make her part of our lives every day. She becomes less threatening and less scary, and we can talk about her more easily. You know, there's a lot of need in the world. We're very aware of it because of our internet connections, and we're surrounded by it here, our chosen home. We also see happiness here in the celebrations amid the suffering of poverty and lack. When the need is overwhelming for me, I think of this story. One night there was a storm on the ocean, and hundreds of starfish washed up on the shore. And in the morning, there was a little kid walking on the shore, picking them up and throwing them back one at a time into the ocean. And some old person came over and said, child, do you think you're making a difference? And the kid picked one up, and as he tossed it into the ocean, said, I am for that one. I can't help everybody, but I can help some. And we need to hold that, because if we get overwhelmed, we back away from the suffering. And it doesn't help us. In all the work I've done, I've learned that there are 3 immeasurables that are the roots of happiness: gratitude, generosity, and service. One begets the other. According to Elaine St. James from her book, Simplify Your Life, there is a self-expansive aspect of gratitude. Very possibly it's a little-known law of nature. The more gratitude you have, the more you have to be grateful for. I see heads agreeing with that. Generosity can be expressed with simply a smile. If you don't have a few pesos for a beggar, you can give them the dignity of recognition by looking at them, smiling, and saying gracias. You will feel happier than if you avoid the suffering and walk away. Even a street dog benefits from a gentle touch or a treat pulled from your pocket. Practicing gratitude, generosity, and service will bring you joy and peace and serenity. There is a website called gratefulness.org. You can sign up for a daily gratitude. I find it also one of those things that's transformed my life. People keep gratitude books. It's a practice, and I think it's an important thing to embed in our lives because I see and know the results of it. You know, the most common ideology of legacy is a person's tangible assets and possessions. Some people have a great deal to sort out. I often wonder what Elon Musk and Bill Gates' wills look like. They must be pages and pages. Now, singer Aretha Franklin, she died 5 years ago, and her 4 sons have been battling over her $80 million estate for 5 years. She knew she was dying. She had pancreatic cancer, and she still didn't update her estate plan, kind of like my IRA. You know, we all know someone whose 4th cousin got it all. Don't do that to the people you love. Take care of your business because it'll make you so happy to get it done. It's like your taxes, done. You know? And consider your executor carefully. I mean, I heard a story where the executor moved into the house that was left to a charity and didn't execute the will, and they can't get them out. So you have to, all these things take a lot of consideration. One of the candidates for Mexican president next year, Xochitl Galvez, is an indigenous woman who made a big success of her life. She said, in our indigenous culture, it is believed that the only sin that leads to hell is to keep more money than you need. You know, I wrote a story called Problems of Abundance that's supposed to be in the September LOHO. It's kind of about that. You can't give it all away now because you're going to need some of it, but you can plan now where to give it when you no longer need anything. So this is a booklet that's on a table outside from LCS. It's called Being Prepared for Life and Death Lakeside. It's a roadmap, and it explains the differences of planning ahead here versus north of the border. And you can get more at LCS, and Lorna's going to mail the link for the online people. You know, leaving a legacy is not only about asset protection. It's also about acts of kindness, both the invisible and the visible ones. You know, as elders, we have a responsibility to be role models for each other also. I had a doula client who was dying of cancer, and she stopped taking treatment. She didn't want to spend the end of her life going back and forth to Guad for chemo. And she gathered all of her girlfriends, and she put together a farewell party while she was still well enough to do it. She had it at Eve's, and her friends made paper flowers, and they had them in all the buckets around the pool, and they set up a throne for her at the entrance, and there was a table in front of her with treasures, books, and figurines, and little things, and there was a tree, a dead tree with little plastic bags with jewelry, and she told everyone to take something. And I got these earrings. I hardly knew the woman, and I will remember her until the day I die. It's these little acts of thoughtfulness and kindness that stay with us, and they're free. It's about how attitudinally we're not crabby and causing aggravation. We're generous with just our hearts. You know, we have a responsibility to guide the future generations too, especially the children. They're suffering terribly now, you know, trying to grow up in this modern world, searching for well-being. And we have it. And I'm not talking just about money. I'm talking about our values. One way to guide loved ones is to write an ethical will. If you don't know what it is, you can Google and get directions, but it's a document that passes on your values and moral philosophy from one generation to the next. You can make it as small or as large as you choose, but think about writing one, even if only for your own satisfaction. How did you get here so well? You know? Estate planning requires thought and understanding of the differences between Mexico and those north of the border, and Lorna's going to explain that in a little while, quite clearly. And you have to decide what and who do you want to leave what to. Oh, yeah. It's a process of discernment. It takes time, it takes making a list, and oh, it is so easy to put off. I'm a veteran procrastinator. I know these things. That's why I had my old boyfriend on my IRA. You know, people in relationships change. I just visited a best friend in California and asked him to review all of his documents because I'm on all of them, and his healthcare directives and will were last written 10 years ago. Half of his beneficiaries are either dead or he's no longer speaking to them. That happens. One of the 3 people on his healthcare directives is no longer able to make decisions for him. So please periodically check and update your documents if you've already done them. You know, years ago, I visited my friend Pauline after she downsized and moved to a condo. When I admired a painting I'd not seen before, she said, "Oh, I'll put your name on it for when the time comes." And I said, embarrassed, "Oh, no, that's okay. I didn't even like it that much." And she reached into a drawer and pulled out a sticker and took the painting off the wall, and it already had a name on it. So then I was a little relieved and also embarrassed, and I said, "Oh, that's okay." She said, "No, darling, we're not speaking anymore." And she put my name on a sticker and put it on top of the other name. So you can change your mind as long as you're able to. This is a gift. Don't put it off thinking you'll be better at it later. There's that sudden event that could happen, and you make a mess. How many of you have cleaned out somebody's house after they died? Talking about messes, right. It is just an appallingly hard task. Uncomfortable, at least. There is a book written in 2018 called The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning. Anybody know it? It sold 1 million copies, and now Amy Poehler, the comedian, has turned it into a TV series on Peacock, going through people's things. You know, we do need to laugh about death sometimes. I don't see her as that, scary thing. I see her as this image of warmth and love and conclusion. The woman who had that party where I got her earrings, I went up and I said, "How do you feel about this?" And she said, "I'm happy. I'm going home." That's where I want to be at the end. That's where we all want to be, don't we? Yeah, going home. So cleaning out what you don't need or use now is one practice of letting go that prepares us for letting go of bigger parts of life, like hearing and sight, walking, consciousness, loved ones, and finally ourselves. The practice of letting go and grieving our losses is one preparation for being the last to die. I mean, I visit 90-year-old people in nursing homes, and they say, "All my friends are dead," and I can't tell them to make younger friends. Just embrace the whole thing. It's all part of the same. It's also an act of generosity and service to those in need to give away what you're not using and don't need. Charities always need financial support, and UUF is no different. Consider the ripple effect to future generations when you donate. Lorna will explain the details of why and how to do that. And if you're not interested, share the information. There are a lot of people who need to know this here, how to do it. Because the life that you make is not only yours. We're all part of everything. We're one in the sacredness of being alive. The only aspect of being alive that each and every one of us shares is death. And you can make yours a good one only by planning ahead. And that's how you live forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Loretta. And now Lorna Dean, whom we all know so well for her many contributions to this fellowship, will present a short slide presentation to walk us through the how of leaving a legacy, sharing any tangibles you may have.
Good morning. I'm Lorna Dean, and I'm part of LCUUF's legacy team. I'm going to talk about practical ways that you can leave a bequest or a special gift to LCUUF. This information may not apply to everyone at this time, but you could keep it in mind for future consideration. We first organized a legacy team for LCUUF in January of 2018 to research issues related to bequests to LCUUF. We met with our accountant, a lawyer, someone from a notario's office, and other nonprofits in the area. The current legacy team is Norman Woods and myself, with Reverend Matt and the board president, Chris Gang, supporting us. We would especially welcome new members on the legacy team, especially if you have any fundraising experience with other churches. The presentation was scheduled today because Mexican notaries give a discount on Mexican wills in September each year. So you may have a will or you may not. Think about whether it's time to revise it. And if you're going to either prepare it for the first time or revise it, think about putting LCUUF in your Mexican will or your US will. Or perhaps consider a special gift to LCUUF while you're still alive. Now, for our investment funds, LCUUF currently has about $150,000 US in a Schwab brokerage account. Plus, we've got about 1.2 million pesos in an investment account at Actinver. That's about $70,600 US. So that's a little over $200,000, but that's not enough to buy a building in Ajijic. It really isn't. So we're looking for bequests or special gifts so that we're in a better place to buy or build a building at some time in the future. Basically, we need about $500,000 or $600,000 to do anything reasonable. So if you name LCUUF in a Mexican will, it's very important to specify the full name as Lake Chapala Unitarian Universalist Fellowship Asociación Civil, not Unitarian Fellowship or any abbreviation. It has to be spelled out exactly correct. It's easiest for us if you make a bequest as a fixed peso amount or a percentage of your estate. But the legacy team has investigated leaving a Mexican house to LCUUF, and I'm going to talk about that more later. One point I'd like to make, the LCUUF board reserves the right to decline any specific bequest, but this is things like, don't leave us your dog or your US car that is difficult to sell, or something, a house that requires, is full of stuff and requires a lot of work to put up for sale. Please don't. In order to do a Mexican house, you can name LCUUF in a Mexican will as the beneficiary, but you can't put an organization on the deed as a beneficiary. You can only put ancestors and descendants on a deed. If anyone's interested in doing this, talk to a member of the legacy team and we can arrange a meeting with Salvador Rivera in Notario number 2's office. He specifically offered to discuss this issue with any potential donors in advance. A donor would need to instruct their executor to give a copy of the Mexican death certificate and the will to LCUUF after the donor's death. Because then LCUUF has to take the death certificate and the will to a notario to start probate. A lawyer can do probate by going to court, but it's easier to do probate directly through the notario, at least in his opinion. What will happen is the notario gives LCUUF a title, with LCUUF named as the beneficiary, but with the donor's name still on the title. But at this stage, we can put the property up for sale. Now, this isn't specific legal advice. We encourage everyone to get advice from your own Mexican legal counsel. The legacy team is not giving legal advice on your specific situation. Let's move on to bequests from U.S. wills. As you know, we established a U.S. 501c3 charitable organization in Texas, and it's known as Lake Chapala Unitarian Universalist Fund, Inc. This is the full name that you want to put in a U.S. will. I'll refer to it as LCUUF, Inc., but you need to list the full name on legal documents. And the same as a Mexican will, you can state a fixed amount of cash or a percentage of the estate. But there's one other thing that you can do in the US. If you have an IRA, you can name LCUUF Inc. as the beneficiary of your IRA. You have to do this with your financial institution. This is a point that Loretta brought to my attention when we were putting this service together. For the Canadians, we don't have a Canadian organization. Canadians can make bequests or gifts directly to LCUUF Inc., but we've got no way of giving Canadian tax receipts or anything. Your bequest just gets converted to US dollars. Occasionally people ask about restricted bequests. This is for the specific purpose. We discourage them. This is when you might want to make a bequest for the choir forever or for landscaping or something like that. It's a nice idea, but remember that we have a volunteer board that turns over the years, and it's kind of hard for them to keep track of a small pot of money that's supposed to be used for a particular thing. Now I'm going to move on to special gifts that you can do before you die, instead of putting it in your will. There's two specific kinds that have US tax advantages: qualified charitable distributions and donations of US securities. And I'm going to talk about each one of these separately. Okay, a qualified charitable distribution is a withdrawal from your individual retirement account, which is paid directly to a charitable organization such as LCUUF Inc. Some members of the congregation already do this for their pledges. And the advantage is the withdrawal counts as part of your required minimum distribution, but it's not taxable income to you as the donor or to LCUUF Inc. And if you're taking the standard deduction, this works better, because if you withdrew the money to yourself, paid the taxes on it, and then turned around and made a charitable distribution, it would be for a smaller amount. And unless you're well over the standard deduction, it wouldn't count for much. It's a good way around that point. Let's go on to US securities. LCUUF Inc. has a brokerage account at Charles Schwab. If you've got appreciated stocks in your portfolio, meaning stocks that have made a significant gain, you can transfer them directly to LCUUF Inc.'s brokerage account. Now, this works well because you get a tax deduction for the full market value of the stock, but you don't pay capital gains on it. And LCUUF Inc. doesn't pay capital gains on receipt or sale of the stock either. In conclusion, the reason we're doing this is sometime we may not want to rent or share a building forever. We found out that this is inconvenient because your lease can come to an end, like ours is in January. So we need some kind of significant investment fund to consider purchasing or building an appropriate space. So we're just asking people to think about ways you can help LCUUF achieve this goal. Okay, that's all I have to say on it. I'm going to take questions from the audience here or comments. Paul, maybe would you? You're so good at the microphone. Anybody with a question? Sharon.
I was quite surprised, and I'm interested in a little bit more information about the required minimum distribution transfer.
Uh-huh.
Could you speak just a little bit more about that?
Okay.
How one...
You have to talk to your financial institution, whoever holds your IRA, and ask them how they do it. Some of them will issue, you tell them you want to do a qualified charitable distribution and the amount. Some of them will write out a check exactly to the name and mail it directly to the charity. You can't end up with the money in your account. This is a little bit tricky because we want you all know Susan Miller, who's now in Virginia. Her daughter used to do this for us, and we would give out her daughter's address. So your financial institution would mail the check to her daughter. She would run over to Truist Bank and deposit it. Now that Susan's nicely established in Virginia, we'll probably have them sent directly to her. But you have to talk to your own financial institution. Some of them will do a electronic transfer, but some of them won't. And sometimes somebody that tried it got it screwed up. So it's the ones that have done it successfully seem to have got a check issued, mailed to a U.S. address, who will put it in Truist for us. That's it. It works nicely, and it's better than just taking out the money and paying taxes and then making a donation. Eric?
I'm assuming that you need to change, if you change one will, let's say Mexico, you have to have exactly the same change in the U.S. will? And does one will supersede the other?
Personally, most people, I think, have their U.S. will limited to assets in the U.S. and their Mexican will limited to assets in Mexico. So they're not equivalent and they don't even overlap each other.
Thanks.
I think that's the easier way to do it. Anything else? Oh, Kaya?
I keep between 5,000 and 10,000 equivalent U.S. dollars in my bank account here. And is there any way, upon my death, you have access to my bank account?
Yeah, I'll get the money. Yes, we've already arranged this.
I mean, that would be. I think a lot of people die with money left over in their account.
In their bank. Okay, when the legacy team was investigating this, several of us asked our own bank, both in Mexico and in the U.S., what we can do. Usually they will allow a transfer on death designation, but it seems to depend on the bank, what they will allow and what they won't. I asked my bank in the U.S. if we could put a charity on as transfer on death. And they said, yes, but somebody from the charity will have to show up in person with documents and accept the money. So please don't leave us, $20 this way. But it depends on your bank. So you basically have to ask the bank if you can designate a transfer on death person, or whether it has to, a person or organization. Anything else? Sue?
I talked to my credit union about what to do with what was left over in my bank account. They sent me a form, which I put my brother's name on that. He's the executor of my will, and he has access to that form so he can pay all the bills when I die.
That works. Yes. Hi, Liz? Wait till Paul brings you the microphone.
Let's see. I have an executor that I have assigned to help me with money, and he's got durable power of attorney, and I have him a co-signer, or we share in my bank account.
Mm-hmm.
So that if I die, he can just do whatever he wants.
He can take out the money.
Yeah,
Yes.
he has access to everything.
Yes. That seems to work well in Mexico. I mean,
Well, that is my situation in the U.S.
in the U.S.
Yeah, but you have to have somebody that you absolutely trust.
Right, that they don't just take all the money, you want them to pay the bills with it. Yes, yes. Anybody else? Anybody on Zoom got a question? Let's hope you wrote it in the chat box if you do. Okay, let's just wait and see if, is there anybody on Zoom? Nobody's coming up, so go ahead.
Okay. I was just wondering, it sounds like so complicated. Will you have a class on this?
Loretta,
class.
Loretta gives classes at LCS regularly, and you've got one coming up? November 8th and 15th at LCS. Loretta's doing a class reviewing this sort of thing. And you can come and ask me, but I'm not a lawyer, but I can tell you what I know about it. Anybody else? Okay, that's all I have. There are some handouts on the front table. The booklet from LCS that Loretta mentioned is there. We have a booklet especially for LCUUF. This is what you give to your attorney so that they can get the name spelled right in your will. And I'm going to send out both the booklet and the brochure and my slides probably to the whole IO group this afternoon, so you'll get it that way too. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And now our closing words by Barbara J. Pescan. Because of those who came before, we are. In spite of their failings, we believe. Because of and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we too dream. Let us go, remembering to praise, to live in the moment, to love mightily, to bow to the mystery. Let us extinguish our chalices with these words which we read together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we keep in our hearts and share with all the world. Our worship is over. Our service begins. Go in peace and with a purpose.